You ever think your life is falling apart, and then it finds a brand new creative way to collapse even harder? Yeah, that's what happened the morning I got sued for snoring. So here's what actually went down, and trust me, by the end of this story, you're going to feel like your problems are a warm hug in comparison. Because nothing, and I mean nothing, prepares you for opening your mailbox and finding a bright yellow court summons accusing you of committing nighttime acoustic disturbances of excessive magnitude. That's the legal way of Yellowber, saying, "Your sleep is too loud, buddy." And I swear, I wish that was the worst part. Because this whole thing lit up at the exact same time I learned my wife had been cheating on me. Yeah, while I was snoring too loud, she was busy. So buckle up, because this story is like watching a man get hit by a bus, stand up, dust himself off, and then immediately get hit by a train. Let me start with the moment everything snapped. It was a Tuesday, which already sets the tone, because Tuesdays are basically Mondays wearing cheap sunglasses, pretending to be chill. I go out to grab my mail, expecting the usual: coupons I never use, credit card offers I never want, and those little real estate flyers with the smiling agent who looks like he's never once paid full price for a haircut. But sitting there, all smug and official looking, is this envelope stamped from the county courthouse. I'm thinking, okay, either I'm being drafted, sued, or someone finally noticed I've been ignoring jury summons since 2015. I open it, and I swear on everything I love. It says I'm being taken to civil court because, quote, "my nocturnal respiratory patterns create an environment inconsistent with community peace." End quote. Basically, my snoring is a war crime. I actually laughed out loud. Not a normal laugh, either the kind of deranged giggling you do when your brain taps out and leaves the room. Because who the hell sues someone for sleep? I'll tell you who. My neighbor, Stan. Now, I need you to understand something about Stan. This man is the human version of a parking ticket. Just walking negativity. He once reported me to the HOA because my garden hose looked too green. I didn't even know hoses had acceptable colors. He's the type of guy who times how long people spend at stop signs, and apparently, he has been tracking the decibel level of my snoring. He attached a chart. Live, data, points. This man woke up every night, grabbed a decibel meter, I guess we're dealing with a part-time Batman villain, and recorded my snoring like he was studying migrating birds. And I should have ignored it. I should have laughed, thrown it in a drawer, moved on with my life. But then life decided to go full soap opera on me. Because literally that same afternoon, the same day I get sued for involuntary nighttime noises, I find out my wife is cheating. And not in some dramatic movie way, where you walk in and catch people red-handed. No. My situation was so stupid, it could have been a sitcom episode. I came home early because I had to call a lawyer a sentence no man expects to say because of snoring. And as I walk inside, I hear my wife in the kitchen talking softly, whispering, giggling, not at me. I haven't heard her giggle at me like that since, I don't know, Obama was still in office. At first, I assume she's on the phone, but the tone was different. You know when you hear someone use their "this is someone I like" voice? The light, sweet one you haven't heard in months? Yeah, that one. I walk toward the kitchen, and she doesn't hear me because I'm wearing socks, and apparently I float now. And she says, and I quote, "I can't wait to see you again tonight." I look at the counter. She's cutting vegetables, smiling at her phone. And I swear my soul stepped outside my body like, oh, so this is what we're doing today. It didn't all hit me at once. It was more like my brain shoved two puzzle pieces together violently. Piece 1, you're getting sued because your sleep is too loud. Piece 2, your wife is meeting someone again tonight. And my body just shut down, like a factory that suddenly loses funding. I remember standing there thinking, wow, my life is falling apart because apparently I sound like a chainsaw, and my wife found someone with quieter breathing. I didn't confront her right away. Not because I'm weak, but because, swear to God, I literally didn't have the emotional bandwidth. I only had room for one meltdown at a time, and the neighbor lawsuit was currently hogging all the oxygen in the building. So what do? I go outside, sit in my car, stare at the steering wheel like it owes me money, and I think, what the hell happened to me? How did I reach the level of man who gets sued for snoring and cheated on in the same day? Naturally, I call my best friend. Because if you don't immediately call your best friend to emotionally dump the worst day of your life onto them, are you even friends? He picks up and goes, "Yo, what's up?" I say, "I'm being sued." Mated. He says, "What did you do?" I say, "I slept." Dead silence. Then he says, "Okay, but like, aggressively? Did you sleep aggressively?" He thinks I'm joking, so I send him a photo of the summons. He loses it. He's laughing so hard he's wheezing like a broken accordion. And when he finally calms down, I hit him with part 2. And also, I think my wife is cheating. He stops laughing real fast. Suddenly it's, "Bro, are you okay? What happened? Do you need a place to stay? Should I bring snacks? Should I punch someone?" So now I have 2 disasters, a legal one and a marriage one. Let's start with the lawsuit because, honestly, that one's funnier and hurts less emotionally. I schedule an appointment with a lawyer. This man is everything you imagine when you picture a cheap lawyer from a strip mall. Worn-out tie, energy of someone who's had 8 divorces, office that smells vaguely like printer ink and regret. I explain the situation. He stares at me for a solid 10 seconds. Then he says, "I've handled noise complaints, but usually the person is awake during the noise." We go through the paperwork. Stan being the overachieving neighborhood menace, he has listed every date, time, and sound level. Some nights apparently I hit 72 decibels. I looked it up later, that's about the volume of a vacuum cleaner. So basically, I'm out here, hoovering in my sleep. My lawyer tells me something that changes the whole tone. Technically, he can sue you. Will he win? Probably not. But he'll drag you to court. That's the problem. Great. So now I get to spend my free time arguing in front of a judge about whether my nose is a biological hazard. As for my wife, I spent a full week pretending everything was normal while simultaneously losing my mind. Every time she smiled at her phone, every time she went to run errands, every time she was suddenly just a little too cheerful, it felt like getting poked in the chest with a thumbtack. Not enough to kill you, but enough to drive you insane. And here's the crazy part. I started wondering if my snoring was part of why she cheated, which is a dumb thought, but when you're spiraling, you'll blame yourself for things that don't even make sense. Like, maybe she wanted someone who sleeps silently, like a ninja. The breaking point happened one night when she said she was meeting a friend after work and would be home late. And I said, "Which friend?" She froze. People only freeze when they're guilty or when they spot a bear. She muttered something about a coworker, grabbed her purse, and rushed out so fast you'd think the house was on fire. I sat there in the empty living room, the same living room I had assembled furniture in for us, hung pictures in for us, fixed the AC at 2 a.m. for us, and I realized there was no us anymore, and probably hadn't been for a long time. I checked our phone records, and there it was, the number she'd been calling every day, and suddenly everything snapped into place like the final twist of a puzzle. But before I could even process that, the court date arrived. And let me tell you, walking into a courtroom to defend your snoring while your marriage is crumbling is a special kind of humiliation they don't warn you about in school. Stan was there. Of course he was. He had a binder, color-coded. This man had printed spectrograms. He had visual graphs of my snoring frequencies, like he was presenting a science fair project called "Why My Neighbor is a Disaster." The judge looks at him like, "Sir, are you serious?" And Stan goes, "Your Honor, I have not slept a full night in 8 months." And for the first time, I actually felt bad for the guy. Not enough to forgive the lawsuit, but enough to understand why his eye twitched every time he saw me. My lawyer argued that snoring is involuntary, natural, and legally not something you can control. He even brought up medical studies. He quoted Sleep Foundations. He basically turned me into a one-man educational documentary. The judge eventually dismissed the case, but not without suggesting politely that I consider getting tested for sleep apnea. And honestly, fair enough. I probably should. So I walked out of that courtroom with one victory and one giant mess waiting at home. Because after weeks of denial, avoidance, and pretending things were fine, I finally confronted my wife. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I didn't give some dramatic speech. I just said, I know. She broke. Instantly, like a balloon hitting a cactus. She admitted everything. The late nights, the calls, the emotional affair turning physical. And I just sat there, feeling weirdly empty. Like all my emotions had been pre-used on the lawsuit, and I had nothing left to give. And then here's the twist that somehow made the whole thing even more absurd. She says, I think the stress from your snoring pushed us apart. End quote. Really? Really? I get sued, then cheated on. And the connecting thread between both events is apparently my nose making too much noise during REM sleep. At that point, I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, but because my brain was like, nope, we're done. We're checking out. We separated a week later. And here's the crazy, stupid, oddly uplifting part. That whole disaster, it forced me to fix my life. I got a sleep study. Turns out, yeah, I actually do have sleep apnea. Now I have a CPAP machine, and I sleep like a silent, peaceful baby. I moved out, started fresh, got therapy, got healthier, started cooking for myself instead of emotionally bonding with frozen burritos. And the neighbor, believe it or not, we're actually cool now. Once I got the CPAP, he came over and said, it's been quiet lately. That was his version of saying sorry. I'll take it. Looking back, that whole experience, the lawsuit, the cheating, the collapse, it felt like life grabbed me by the shoulders and shook me until something finally snapped loose. And it sucked. It sucked so hard. But it also woke me up. Sometimes your life needs to burn down so you can rebuild it the right way. And apparently, in my case, the match was my snoring.